So just getting the room temperature. Curious, like, how do you feel at the moment? Just one word. Maybe you can hop off mute and shout it out, or you can feel free to put it in the chat. Curious, I like that. Very good. All right, well, I think we're also ready for the slide after this, Dana. And I'm just curious, like today, what would you like to get out of this session? Maybe you have already something in your mind that made you want to join the session on transitions, maybe some changes in your life that are happening now. So just take a moment for yourself and feel what it is you would like to get out of the session. And again, feel free to pop it in the chat or unmute and let us know so that we can take that into account during the session to give you all what you want. Great. I see some really nice answers from the previous questions. I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds maybe to write down what you would like to get out of this session. And then we can go ahead and get started. Oh, I love that one. How to calm myself during major shifts in my routines. Good one, Tamelo. Or actually, that was Dana, I see. All right, well, I think we're how to get rid of stress and enjoy transitions more. That's good. All right. I guess you guys would be, oh, go ahead. Someone wanted to say something. Ellie, was it you? No? Okay, sorry. We'll continue then, because I think you might be curious to get to know your host for today. So that will be Emily and myself. So Emily, do you want to start introducing yourself to these beautiful people?
Great, yeah. My name is Emily Braucher. I'm based here in the US and I use she, her pronouns. My background is in international development and I'm an international speaker and trainer and coach, and I work with nonprofit and corporate clients on a range of things, including cultural humility, cultural competence, intercultural conflict, cultural adjustment. And I've lived and worked in over 30 countries, and I have 2 masters in this topic. So over my decades of experience, I've isolated a few tools and frameworks. A lot of them are brain-based that I have found really kind of move the needle in terms of improving our intercultural experience and our experience in transitions as well. And I am one of the several coaches at Trova.Health, who's one of the sponsors of this webinar. Trova is building the future for easier access to culturally aligned mental health coaching and wellness to people who live outside of their passport country. So we're doing this by giving global and diverse providers the tools they need to provide quality and far-reaching virtual care, and then matching those providers with people searching for care, because it can be really tough living outside of your country. And so we really want to support the mental health there. So that's what we're doing. And Annika, back to you.
Great. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Annika. I'm the founder of Peekabond, and we're on a mission to help families across the world connect with young children. And we do that through playfulness and through science-based content inspiration. So we also created a mobile app in collaboration with my amazing team. Mona, who is also on the call, is actually one of my teammates. And we already have a team of 7 people in total. And the reason I started it is because I'm an aunt to a 3-year-old and a 3-week-old now in Australia. And I also lived on 5 different continents myself and have a background in international business and also as an accredited and certified coach. And that's why today I'm really excited to host a topic also on transitions. And this workshop is really suitable for anyone interested in transitions and for specifically, we think, expats or, for example, interstate parents who want to learn about managing the stress of transitions more proactively for themselves and also for their children. So maybe we can go to the next slide. We have a few objectives and overview for today, as you can see. So I guess most of it speaks for itself, but I would say one of the key objectives after the introduction is to give you some concrete tools to make transitions easier for you and your people around you, like your children or your loved ones. You'll get to know more about what's happening in your brain. So my lovely co-host today, Emily, is going to tell you all about the theory behind that. And you'll get a framework and like tools to help you deal with transitions and changes in life. So we also hope to keep it very interactive. So of course there are some experts here, but also I really like to share with each other on maybe what changes you're going through, and maybe you can ask for some input, advice from us, or have the opportunity to just share. Sometimes that can also be already very helpful. So yeah, that's it. I think the floor is now yours, Emily, to get us busy.
Okay. Great. So there are so many different kinds of life transitions that we could be talking about. So I want everyone to just put in the chat really quick so I know what we're talking about here. When you think about your last year and maybe your coming year, what kinds of transitions did you experience, or are you anticipating experiencing? So just put it in the chat really quick so I can draw upon the right examples. A continental move, that's a big one. So within that, there's a lot of sub transitions, a whole list of sub transitions in there. There's the transition out, the transition in, all of that. What other kind of transitions are folks anticipating? Humbling tough recovery from knee replacement and putting our next trip to Australia on hold. Yes. The transition of expectation. Oh no, Annika, you fell off the stage. Oh, you have to change all your plans. Anticipating abroad again. This is not something that just naturally gets easier with time. I feel like this is why the brain understanding has really helped me a lot. Some people said to me, like I had students who were like, oh, you must be immune to culture shock because you've done it so often. Nope, I'm just painfully aware when I'm going through it. But I've just been able to develop some tools. I wanted to start us off. Oh, we got some more. Quitting sports been doing for 25 years. That is very hard. Changing continents, starting a new job. Awesome. So this is where we're going to have you a little activity that involves actually writing with an actual pen or pencil or crayon. So if you could get that out, and here's what I'm going to ask you to do is actually identify your non-dominant hand, the one that you don't usually use to write. And I'm going to give you some instructions on what to write. So the first is to write this sentence. I am writing this with my non-dominant hand. So put it in the chat. I'm writing this with my non-dominant hand. So everyone should be writing, going along. Okay. And when you're done with that, go ahead and sign your name. Go ahead and try, make a nice signature. Luckily, oh my gosh, the other day I was getting a new passport and I was like, oh, do I have to be careful signing the passport for traveler's checks? And I was like, oh, we just don't even do that anymore. That's just dating myself. Next, please draw a square, then a tree. I'm writing my non-dominant hand. Sign your name, draw a square, then a tree. And finally, write today's date. Let me know when you're done. How's everyone doing? You got it? You got it? Oh man, Andrea might be able to go with both hands. All right, we can stop right now. Stop your writing right now. Let's see it. Let's see it, Annika. How did it go? Oh, very nice, very nice. So Annika, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of debrief this activity with people.
Yeah, indeed. So how did you feel when you are doing this exercise? I'm curious if someone wants to share. We're a very small group, so Ronnie says, awkward. Andrea, anxiety. My hand hurts. Yeah. Were you proud of your work? And is this also how you would normally perform? It's a bit of an odd question, but I can see people shaking no. Thumbs down, indeed. And maybe one other question is like, how does this activity relate to the experience of transitioning from one thing to the next? So it could be one culture to another culture. Fish out of the water, indeed. Yeah, so you are used to writing, of course, with your right hand, feeling very in control. You got this, you know this, and then suddenly you have to switch. Being new, not good at something, and not trying to be perfectionistic about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
Very
Very
good.
totally.
Any other things that you guys would like to share? Mine looks very arty, by the way. I was like, wow, this is also has never knew that I could write like that and paint like that. So sometimes you might surprise
Ellie
yourself.
wrote, my transition are usually not from one thing, like to doing something so different. Yeah, it's a pretty dramatic, dramatic shift.
Indeed. All right. I think the next part is going to be about transition stress, because I can imagine a lot of people might also have experienced that a little bit in a tiny way, like just now with this exercise. So, Emily, would you like to say a bit about that?
Yeah. So what we were trying to create in that moment is just some transition stress. You know, there's a time factor, there's doing something new, there's battling with your own expectations. All of these are part of transition stress. So this is something we experience when we go through any sort of transition. It could be acute or low level, you know, all of a sudden it comes on, or low level, dynamic, can move throughout the day. One thing that makes it tricky is it's common to experience multiple emotions at the same time. So it creates a strong sense of confusion, which our brains don't like at all. And to be honest, no two transitions or transition stress will be the same. So of the list that we came up with a few minutes ago, all the transitions that people are experiencing or anticipating experience, which has been causing you the most stress? Kind of honing in on one that I want you to focus on for the day as we're talking about transition and working with transition stress. Not knowing, feeling out of control. Yeah. Not knowing what decision to make. Not adjusting as quickly as I'd like to. Yes. Oh, yes. The mind can just drag you into much more anxiety. Awesome. As you continue to think about this and the scenario that you're going to think about today, I just want to start to frame that the thing that makes transition stress really tricky is that we don't always realize what's going on for us. So just a few weeks ago, I was dealing with the stress of the transition of my kids going back to school. I have a 6 and a 4-year-old. And last year, my daughter had started at kindergarten, which was full-time here in Colorado, and that was super stressful. So at least this year, I was expecting this additional stress. So just knowing what to expect made it more manageable. Yet at the same time, I found myself like really discontent and anxious and uncertain. And I was talking to people, and I was, for the first time in 20 years, questioning whether I wanted to keep living in Colorado. I was from the East Coast, and I was pretty sure that I would just be much happier, closer to my family. I had just come back from spending 5 weeks for my family out there and with my family, and it had me questioning everything. And so in this discontent and this angst, I slowly started to recognize something that felt really familiar. which was this like hyper focus on the external. In Buddhism, they call it one problem away from happiness. So it felt like, if I could just change this one thing, I'd be happy again. If I could just have no more school activities, I'd be much better. If I could just work less, if my family could just visit more often. And here's the thing that I've come to learn from the neuroscience of adjustment. When you start to obsess about changing things around you, most likely it's really you that's changing. And that's the harder thing to deal with, is yourself changing, than perhaps the idea that you could change something and make it better. But when you recognize this, you can focus your efforts on healthy, personalized coping mechanisms for change, rather than obsessing and grasping at the what ifs, the if only kind of thing, which your brain would love to do because it's a little bit easier. So let me fill you in on some of the neuroscience of adjustment, because this has been really helpful for me. Maybe I'm just a geek that way. It's been really helpful for me to kind of figure out what can help in major life transitions. And the basic circuitry of change is the same for adults and children, though the behaviors are going to look very different. So let's use the stress of cultural adjustment, because that's what we focus on at Trova, is the international or intercontinental experience. And I believe that many of you have experienced that as well. So another story. So after I graduated from college, which was about 20 years ago now, I decided to sign up for the US Peace Corps. And I was told I was going to the Pacific, to this group of islands. Here's this picture, called the Republic of Kiribati. And I had never heard of that. So I looked it up on like literally this new thing called the internet. It was a couple images came up, and I saw images like this. And I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be amazing. I am psyched. I'm going to live 2 years abroad on this island. I'm going to learn new things. I'm going to be swimming every day. It's going to be radically different. Yes. And when I got there, it looked more like this. Dana, if I could get you to go to the next slide. This is what the capital island looked like when I got there. It was on the equator. It was intensely hot and humid. Food was basically rice and bread and fish. There were almost no fruits and vegetables, because you can't actually grow things on the land otherwise than coconut trees. I lost the support of friends and families. Again, this is, prior to any sort of FaceTime experience. Like email was just emerging, but there was no electricity. There was no phones on the island that I was on. I needed to make new friends. I needed to learn a new language. And I was constantly monitoring myself to make sure that I was culturally appropriate. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? What is right? What is going on? I had a new job, and ultimately all of this called my entire worldview into question. But I don't remember being really aware of all of those changes happening. What I remember was this profound frustration and anger at Kiribati, and at my circumstance, and at my decision to go there. It was kind of like writing with a non-dominant hand, like, I know this could be better. I know this could be better. So looking at the brain, which is our next slide, in transition, it starts to kind of make sense as to why our emotions are so intense, and I feel like it really helps normalize what's going on here. And that our emotions are typically negative and often focused outward. So our brain is always working to understand and react. We're basically story-making machines. So on the right side of the brain, if you could go back to that first one, on the right side of the brain, your brain is always working to find inconsistencies. It's very concerned with predictability and control. Predictability and control translates to safety for the brain, because it can know what to anticipate. The left hemisphere of the brain, really roughly, broad strokes about the brain, more responsible for upbeat moods, telling the narrative, making sense about what's going on. So as you move through your day, every day, you're constantly sensing, feeling, learning, acting, thinking. And when all of this is new, your brain is on overdrive to make sense of it. So to make sense and to understand, to craft a new story, the brain needs to build new neural pathways. So neuropathways are connections between the brain cells. Neuropathways become strong and efficient after a lot of repetition. But as we all know, when we're doing something new, like even learning to ride a bike, at first it can be really cumbersome and discouraging. And this is because the process of building new neural pathways takes two important resources: time and energy. The brain loves cheap energy, loves efficiency, and loves speed. So the brain, this was on the slide, the brain consumes 20 to 25% of the body's energy every day, but only takes about 2% of the weight. So conserving energy is one of the main goals of the brain. So normal routines, patterns, habits, that's a great way for the brain to conserve energy. Our cheapest energy comes from habits or thoughts that are repeated a ton. So lifetime coping mechanisms, childhood coping mechanisms, familial cultural instincts, unconscious bias, these are great sources of energy. So when we go to live in another country, it takes a ton of brain energy, which the brain does not like. It has to pull that that energy from somewhere. Listen in, because this is where we're going to start to unravel some good personalized coping strategies. So where is the brain going to pull energy from? It will pull energy from our ability to stay positive and our ability to regulate our emotions. So all of a sudden, that kind of calm, steady state, or that predictable steady state is gone. And your brain is working really hard to make new neural pathways to make sense, to figure out how to get basic tasks accomplished. And in the short term, it basically leaves us like a hot mess, right? And it's not forever, but it feels like that in the moment. So the overwhelm of cultural transition is not actually culture shock, it's brain shock. Because the brain is taking on a new shape. Your brain is literally changing, right? And that takes time. It's going to take time. And during that time, most of us experience these super unsettling highs and lows, like, oh, this is so cool. I hate this place. Oh, it's interesting. Oh, everyone here is horrible. Why did I agree to do this? What is going on? And this is because your energy is diverted to these really important tasks at this time. So for me, understanding the neuroscience of adjustment can help us see that a lot of transitional stress is actually is the expense of reshaping the brain and not the hostile environment. So this is your first call to action. Stop blaming it on the environment. And I mean, of course, there's some places where we don't want to be, but the big changes are going on inside of our brain. Usually what the brain needs is more time and energy. So looking at cultural transition is a really poignant case study in adjustment, but this transition stress happens to varying degrees in any of the transition that all of you mentioned in there. So back to that moment, what I spoke about before, questioning if I should live in Colorado. So once I recognized what was actually happening in that transition stress, which was compounded, coming back from summer break, being with family, going into school, as soon as I recognized that was going on, a whole bunch of tools opened up to me. This is what I knew I had to start doing. I had to be compassionate with myself and buy myself some time, maybe a few weeks, to see if my thinking had changed. At that point, I could go back and reevaluate all those questions of myself. So I just put all the questioning, should I be here, on hold, because I knew my brain was reshaping. I knew I needed to boost my brain energy. This is something we can consciously do so we can free up more energy for things like mood regulation, staying positive. Ways to increase brain energy: get good sleep, eat good food, low sugar food, drink less wine or beer, get more exercise, meditate. All of those things are things that will help free up your resources so that you can actually start to manage and have some excess to work with. The next thing you can do from a brain perspective is to increase predictability. This is a huge one, especially when going abroad. Set new routines and stick to them. A new habit. One of my favorite ways to try to get out of culture shock is to I'm a coffee drinker, find a coffee place or a tea place that I go to, and I go to every day. And I start to recognize the people that are working there, start to ask them questions. I start to be able to rely on that. And the brain's like, whew, okay, at least we can count on something. So you want to increase control and decrease stress. And we're going to talk about a few more ways to do that right now. Anyone have questions about that's, I know, a chunk of content. That's kind of what we're going to be building off for the rest of our time together. Any questions about what was just related, or does that track with your experiences?
One question that has come in, Emily, to me is, how do you know if you're reacting negatively, but it's actually positive, meaning it isn't the right change? I shouldn't still live in Colorado, to use your example, that it actually changed, versus this is negative talk and I'm actually reacting to the transition. So how do you tell between those two things?
Wait, let me clarify. So I guess maybe I don't see those as two different things. So what are the two scenarios?
I'm using your example, but based on the question, it seems that it's, your example was, should I live in Colorado or should I go to the East Coast? And in some circumstances, the actual right answer is yes, you should leave Colorado. So how do you know if your feelings of anxiety about something are actually should propel you to make a change versus when it's something that you have to manage over time?
Right. Great. Okay. So first of all, I want to add the clause that if there's any sort of feelings of anxiety, which is related to personal safety, that's not what we're talking about here. You got to take care of yourself if you shouldn't be in a place because you're actually unsafe. But if you are just questioning your environment, like I was in that moment, what I recommend doing is just pausing. It's just saying, I'm going to write down my thoughts about this, and then I'm going to come back to this in 2 weeks. I'm going to give myself some time. I'm going to see if this was an adjustment process or if there's actually really good information here for me. So I have found that that's often like the easiest, like, let's just acknowledge this and put it on hold, see if my thinking changes as time goes on. Does that clarify or help?
And then Ellie just put in the chat that her sister started Tai Chi after she lost her husband. It's helped. Ellie, do you want to talk more about that?
Just needed to unmute. Yeah, I just got off the phone with her, and whereas she had been so sad and actually depressed for a while, she lost her husband in January. She's had a wonderful experience with Tai Chi, where in talking with the instructor, she has made the class better. He credits her because she would say, well, why can't we do this outside and things like that. He's become, more enlivened in the class. The people are some of the students are a lot older than she is, and she's my age, 70 plus. And but the other thing that also helped then was this openness to relationships, where realizing, this conversation is a lot deeper than it used to be. And it's happened with a number of people, or just meeting someone new and having that happen. It's an openness that has led to true joy in her life. And but the Tai Chi has given her energy, so she doesn't need a nap in the afternoon like she used to. And that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Well, I love that, because that really kind of hits all of the points, that the brain-based points that we're talking about in terms of a tool that can help you work through transitions. So it has the brain energy boosting, it has the predictability, because I'm assuming it's a class that she's going to regularly. It has the stress decreasing because you have the social connection as well as the physical exercise. So that's a great one to think about. What is my version of that for all these Me Too's, you know, like what does that look like to you? Because that's not necessarily, maybe it is Tai Chi, but what is that in your transition, like Anika, and not being on crutches? What is that? What is your Tai Chi, you know? And so making sure that that coping mechanism tracks with what the brain is wanting. And I know, Anika, you have some more questions about this too. Hand it over to you.
I do. Thank you so much. I loved what you said, and actually I learned a lot too today. So that's really great. And I want to make this part very interactive. So indeed, when you have more nice anecdotes or stories that you want to share, please do. One of the things and the ways to mitigate the stress of transitions is indeed social connection. So a social connection can be a very powerful way to foster a sense of belonging, and that relieves a lot of stress. So that's also what we're about at Peekabond. We know that research shows that when people, like for example, parents experience a lot of stress, that having strong social ties with family at a distance can be a way to reduce stress. So I noticed also what Ellie said in the beginning of our session, that she had to say goodbye to her 2-year-old grandson, and that it was quite painful. And I can imagine that it's difficult to explain why you have to leave to such a young child. I think it doesn't mean that you cannot still be in touch with each other and still be for them, present for them, even though you are far away. I'm not sure where you are located yourself, but I can imagine that that can be a help. So a recent study came out and it showed that intergenerational bonds can actually be stimulated through video calls. So video calls and being in touch at a distance can actually help a lot. So I think that not just for grandparent and, for example, grandchildren relationships, but also from parent to child, and bringing them closer. So in conclusion, social networks are a very important tool to reduce stress. And this is also how we created our company Peekabond. So we want to help families bridge the physical distance of being apart and to help them feel closer by when they can't be physically present all the time. So we really want to unlock those deeper family bonds. So I would like to do a little exercise based on the theory that Emily just explained. Maybe we can all take a moment, take your pen and your piece of paper. And I have a couple of questions, which I think are also in the next slide. Dana, I'm not sure if the slides are still up. Which is, well, first question, the theory is, the theory that Emily presented, does it resonate at all? And think about the major life transitions you have gone through and what coping strategies can help you based on what you have experienced in the past as well as in the future. So she already explained a few coping mechanisms. Dana, I don't see the slides. I don't know. Do you want me to share them otherwise, or? Yes, you do? Okay, let me just switch the screen for a second. That's strange. Here we go. Share screen. This one. All right. Sorry, everyone, just switching around. Is it this one? Yes, indeed. So let me just press slideshow. I think we might have skipped a few though, but we'll get back to those afterwards. So maybe take out your piece of paper and your pen and think about the theory that Emily explained about the left brain and the right brain and how it works and how you can actually implement it for yourself. Second question is, how would you apply this to a transition that you're currently dealing with? And the third question is, what can you do tomorrow to manage this transition for yourself a bit better? So I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to write that down for yourself. All right, I see that some people are looking up, which means I think that you're ready. So I think we have at least 3 participants in this call. So maybe I'll give one question to each of you, if that's all right. Who would like to volunteer for answering that first question? Does the theory and the anecdotes, do they resonate, and how so? Who would like to answer that? Please hop off mute to give your thoughts if it resonates.
Yeah, so I'll start out. So I guess, I mean, I've never really thought about it in this way. So, it's also new, and I don't think it's very easy to immediately apply it to like a transition that I'm currently dealing with. But one of the things that did resonate, or well, not necessarily resonate with me, but that I had a question on, which I hope is on the right topic. I've actually already put it in the chat as well. So you were talking about interaction, social interaction, human interaction being a very important part of managing a transition. So by nature, I'm an introvert. So interacting with people, and especially with new people, takes up quite a bit of energy from me. So yeah, for me, there was a bit like, oh, I also have to really make an effort in meeting a lot of new people, and like, how do I then do that without it taking up even more of my energy? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. And it is related to what Emily, of course, said about building those neural pathways. So the more you do it, the easier it gets. So it can be as simple as starting a conversation with someone whilst you're waiting on the bus stop, I guess. But it doesn't have to be going out to a bar immediately and trying to meet new people there. It can also just making it a habit of getting new contacts in your new environment. I don't know, Emily, if you have anything to add to the question of Ronald.
Yes, because when the fun part about having multiple facilitators, we can get different takes on things. So I'm extroverted, but I'm a social introvert, and so there is a lot of exhaustion that comes, especially from that kind of chit-chatty, starting to get to know you situation. And the brain science is going to track in terms of if you feel like you belong in a place, if you feel connected, it is going to be a stress relief. But how you get there is definitely going to look different for everyone. The strategy that I prefer is to, in those times, really tune into, okay, I need to, my husband and I call it cave. I need to go cave. I need to go be by myself and recharge, because that is going to boost my energy. And my preference is actually to focus on maybe 1 or 2 meaningful relationships. So not trying to broaden the web as large as possible, but trying to get to a place where I'm interacting with people that doesn't take as much of my energy. And you can enter some control around that, around like, let's hang out, but I have a hard stop at this time, so I'm gonna have to leave then. So it's not like this open-ended forever taking your energy, but like bring in that brain element of like, how can I feel a little bit more in control while exploring what it does to strengthen the social connections. So that's kind of where, because that chit-chatty kind of place is super exhausting for me.
Yeah, for me too. Especially like, talking to somebody random at the bus stops, like, no. I mean, if I'm in a bar, and especially, after a couple of drinks or whatever, it's fine. But those small interactions, I don't know, those are very exhausting for me. But it makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, go Ellie, please.
To say, if I can share, I'm also an introvert. And so my relationships are typically one-on-one. I'm in California. I had lived in Atlanta. So one of my friends there, we have an appointment once a week and we talk for an hour on the phone. Another one has just talked about the presence that we, have for each other. And then that is energizing. I too need to cave. I don't like big parties. I don't like crowds. So I definitely agree with the one-on-one relationships can be very meaningful.
Yeah, I love that. That may be also an answer to the second question, like how would you apply it? Or it could be in a way like you're saying, like having one-on-one relationships and maybe even calling not in person can also mitigate that stress. Let's see.
I'm not. I know we're mostly with women here, but dudes don't call each other in general. So it doesn't really happen.
So call a woman.
So call a woman.
Okay, fair
Indeed, very
point.
good point, Ellie.
I'll call my mom.
Exactly.
She would love that.
All right. Is there anything you can do tomorrow to manage this transition for yourself better? Mona, did you write anything down for yourself? If you didn't, that's fine.
I wrote. So with me is I get overwhelmed when in that transition phase, and I will not sleep well. Like I drown in it. So I think the first thing I will do is maintain some habits that I'm already used to when I'm going through these transitions. So I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, but I should sleep. I should eat well. So like I should do the things I love still while not focusing on that overwhelming subject, and just keep it on hold and then come back to it.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna stop sharing for a second.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Actually, Anika, it would be great if you wouldn't mind keep sharing it. I'm gonna just mention something.
I think it's the offer, correct? I wanted to make sure that I have the right slides.
Oh no, it was
okay.
it wasn't.
Sorry.
It was the 4 bubbles.
Oh yeah, I'm
I
gonna
just
skip
want
to
to
that one.
make sure people and then we'll skip ahead to that last one.
Here we go.
So I want to encourage, as we've been kind of starting to do and dig in, and like Ronaldo said, like it's hard, or Ronald said, it's hard to start applying this right away once you've learned it. But when I think of, so I work with people, coaching them through transitions abroad specifically. And I think of it, there are 4 components of transition planning. I think, first of all, the idea of transition planning is kind of a new concept of like, not just like throw yourself into it and good luck. But what I kind of work with is these 4 components. My colleague Kate Barardo thought them up. So first, recognize the what is going on. So like I said, I had to actually recognize I was going through transition, understand the why. This is the brain-based stuff. Personalize the how, and this is where coaching can really come in, of like, what exactly are the habits and touchstones that work for me based on my life and my particular way of being, and then apply the what now. This is the actual plan that you're creating. The personalize the how piece is just, what does self-care look like? What does community care look like? That's either giving to community or receiving. Agency, how can I create more control and connect? How can I connect locally with people and at people from with a distance, like with tools like Peekabond. So I just wanted to mention, as we get close to wrapping up the call, that one of the things that I do in coaching is I work with couples who are getting ready to go through a cultural transition, and I help them get laser focused on like, what are the personal triggers, what are the personal transitional stresses, how can we anticipate, how can we make a plan to work together and not just leave it up to chance. And as an offering, I'm going to put this up now, not to add stress to your life, but for the next 24 hours, can you go down to the next slide? Yes, if you go to the Trova website, I usually work with couples for 3 1-hour sessions, and I'm knocking off the price of one of the hours. So it's a huge deal. Never offered this deal before, and I'm just going to leave it up for the next 24 hours. It is available to buy as a gift card if you know someone else is going through it, or like chip in with a couple other people and buy them as a gift card, and I'll work with them individually in 3 30-minute sessions to really do some transition planning. So it's easier on you and the family as well. No, Anika. And so to get that, hold on, we're going to write that in the thing. What you're going to use is the code transition24. No, thank you. And could you send that to everyone, Dana? If you go to the Trova website, and I'll put a link in a second, use the code transition24. And Anika, I know you had an offering as well, which is exciting.
Yes, we do. I will email everyone after the webinar because I know indeed we're almost running out of time. I want to leave some room for Q&A, but we have three little things. One is, of course, you can always use our free Peekabond app in the App Store. And I will send an ebook for everyone who attended this webinar, which is giving all sorts of inspiration on how to connect with family members at a distance, and specifically with young children. And thirdly, we're also looking for families who want to help us improve our product, and we're giving $50 or euro. The exchange course is now, or the currency exchange is the same. So we're giving a cash reward for people to help us. So that's something that we also wanted to offer. So maybe we can wrap up with just a simple summary of what we have spoken about today. So today we've spoken about recognizing the what, understanding the why, the how, and the what now. I'm very curious to hear how you guys feel right now. So maybe you can pop one word in the chat, because I wrote down your words in the beginning and I'm curious to see if there's a difference, because I remember Dana was exhausted, Emily was curious. Ellie, I'm not sure about you, but I'm curious how you feel now. And also, if you guys have any last questions, we have a couple of minutes left to answer anything pressing. I don't see the chat. Does anyone see if anyone's responding anything? I'm sorry. Oh, here it is. So much more to talk through and discover. Ready to learn, indeed. Enlightened. Wow. Curious. Dana's more exhausted. That's no good, Dana. So we'll be emailing you the offer of Trova with the code for those of you who are interested to get that offer. And yeah, maybe does anyone have any questions at this point before we wrap it up? Feel free to unmute and ask.
So Ellie had wrote, now I'm surprised because I thought the webinar was focused on grandchildren. Loved it. So we came out of left field, surprised you with some new content. Yeah, what I often feel for myself is that if I can figure out coping mechanisms and patterns that work for me, then I can replicate them and translate them to help people around me. So whether it's, taking the routine of like, we have a very specific time that we meet with the grandkids, a specific, kids can often respond to like, let's start with a song when we see each other, very predictable kind of patterns, and making sure you're checking all the brain boxes. But yes, you're right. Today, we did not focus so much on the kids, but we're hoping that the tools will translate through the adults to the kids.
I also have a few tips to add to that, if you would be open for that. in terms of like how to help children deal with change and transitions, because it can be uncomfortable for us grown-ups, but especially for young children, it's even more uncomfortable because, yeah, they're less in control, I guess. So the first thing I would say is to be open and be very patient, listen to their feelings, be empathetic. And yeah, it also takes some time to get used to changes. For example, saying goodbye, or going back to school, or going to a new country. So I always think that children are better at dealing with changes than adults, but yeah, they're also only human. So I also think, sometimes it can be really nice to help them deal with changes by telling a story of your own, how you dealt with changes, and kind of like lead by example. So maybe by sharing a story of when you had to say goodbye to someone and how that felt for you. That can also be a playful and nice way to connect. And I think lastly, also by empowering children. So sometimes, having multiple areas where a lot of change is happening is maybe too much. So by giving them at least choices, or the feeling that they're in control of some of the changes that are happening, that could also be helpful if you want to help children deal with change. So children or grandchildren in that sense. So I hope in that sense, Ellie, I did give you a little bit of what you expected. I heard another one that was really nice, the routines from Mona. Actually, she mentioned that if you're going through change, like keep those routines. So those can also be really nice for children, of course. Okay. I think
I'm very happy I was here.
Okay, great.
Oh,
I'm
good.
happy you were happy and satisfied. All right, everyone. I think it's time to wrap up. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can at least